doing more of the dancing and less of the rodeoing. Well, then he also decided that, well, that whole time, I guess, he's been a horseshoer. So he's horseshoeing all through South Texas. So here's a guy that's working San Antonio Fire Department, being a rodeo cowboy, horseshoeing, and being a rodeo announcer all at the same time. So didn't have much free time for other stuff, but by gosh, he was sure to drag the family, all of his kids around with him to these rodeos, and that's where we learned to have our love for the rodeo. So that's just a couple of the hats that he wore right there. But it's just, like once I said, it's a testament to the kind of wonderful person that he was, that he could do so many different things. Now later on, he decided to go ahead, and it wasn't through learning things and challenging his life, so he became an auctioneer. So then he started having auctions all over the place, and so then he dragged us to the auctions. We do a lot of horse sales, and I remember as a kid, we'd be there in the horse sale, and San Antonio auction barn, I think it was, and he'd bring a horse into the ring, and they'd ask, does it ride? So I don't know, and he'd grab me or Clay or Glenn or Pat and throw them up on his back to find out. Well, sometimes they rode and sometimes they didn't. But that was fine. He caught us and drug us off, said, it's close enough, and he'd sell that horse. And so that was just one of the big ways that we were raised as children. We were taught to get up early, work hard, give an honest day work, and be kind to everybody else. He used to love to throw big parties. You come to the house and barbecue. We didn't have much growing up, but by gosh, we had enough to throw something on the pit and have a few cold beers for our friends to come and to visit and have a fellowship like we're having right now. So that was a big part of him. Growing up in the 30s and 40s, through the Depression, he learned the value of friendship more than anything else. Money was never a factor for us growing up, and it still isn't. But friendship is the most important thing that we have. And that's what we have here today, all of his friends. And so he continued his life doing all these different things. And there was just so much going on. He also, a little bit later on, after he finally retired from the fire department, he became worked for the Texas Southwestern Cattle Raisers as a brand inspector. And he loved that job. And he was telling us a story here last week or so about how he was out there and he had found a fellow bringing a bull to sell that something that just didn't seem right, and so he went out there and looked at that bull and asked the guy a few questions, and the guy didn't want to answer too much, so he called Jimmy D and said, hey, there's something fishy about this. Well, he did some investigating and found out it was a cattle rustling deal, so they caught the guy. Then the cattle raisers called Dad and said, good job, we'd like you to move up to Dallas and work for us up here where it's a lot more things going on. And Daddy just looked at him and says, can't do that. My kids are here, my family's here, my friends are here, so I can't leave. And he said, Jimmy D, I just can't do it. Well, they sent him a letter or called him, I don't remember what he said it was, but they said, well, you're being transferred to Fort Worth. And he said, well, no, sir, I'm not, and here's my letter of resignation. He said, my family is more important than this job. And so that's when he stopped being a cattle raiser, brand inspector, but he loved that job because he was out there working with livestock. From there, he went to Lone Star Beer, his next love, good cold beer. That job fit Daddy to a T. He was out there driving the sound truck, hitting up all the rodeos and hitting up all the trail rides, and he would love, even here at the house, we'd come in and we'd be out partying hardy at Mesquite, and we'd get back, and all of a sudden, what do you hear at 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning but cattle call? That means get out of bed. It's time to get the day going. But that's just the way Daddy was. He loved to be a people person, and he worked hard for Lone Star to promote the beer and to go out there and drive the Model T. He helped us with the Aggie Chili team and traveled all over the countryside with us as we competed when we were in college, went all the way to Tolingua. He just loved that. And everybody, all the kids, all of our friends and our nieces and nephews' friends all became his grandkids. So I know there's tons of you out here today that call him Grandpa, because that's what he was. If you were our friends in our age group, he was either your dad or your grandpa. So that's just the person that he was. So everybody loved him. And then after the stint with Lone Star, he got really big into the chuck wagon cooking. And then there's probably tons of people here today that knew him strictly through the chuck wagon cooking, where he'd go set up that chuck wagon and just had a wonderful life, because once again, he was able to be with people, doing good things for people, showing them a good time and showing them how the life was in the way of the cowboy, because he was truly a great American cowboy. Well, now we'd like to go ahead and honor him as being a cowboy by doing a little ceremony here where we're going to brand his coffin, because he had seen this done and he said, you know what, I want that done to mine. And so if we could, let's fire up the pit over here, or the forge, and get this thing going, and we're going to start branding. So if you brought a brand today, come on up here and we're going to get you to put your mark on Daddy's coffin.